Well, hello everyone. Welcome to FileMaker Group Therapy for Citizen Developers, session number 5. In today's session, we're going to be looking at an introduction to mobile-friendly solutions. It's nice to have you back. Those of you who have been here before, I think I see all familiar names. On the agenda for today's session is first, we're going to discuss and identify some performance killers, things that will slow down your performance of accessing a database and using a database when accessed over a slow network like a cellular connection on a mobile device. Then we're going to get in and create some high performance mobile friendly layouts. In that process, we'll be visiting the idea of themes and using screen stencils and turning on auto sizing. Then we're going to create a custom function to calculate the device or application by which a user accessed our database. In that custom function, we'll be using the getApplicationVersion function along with pattern count and the case function. Once we've determined what kind of device each user has used to connect to our database, we'll write a script that will send each user to a layout that's appropriate for their kind of device or application, means of connecting. We will trigger that script to run upon opening the database, and then we'll test it all out by enabling peer-to-peer sharing and accessing the database from an iPhone. So that's where we're headed in this session. First up, performance killers. And the first among them is local styling of layout objects. Local styling of layout objects means that if you directly apply formatting options or attributes like bold, font size, fill color, border style, and corner radius, and all the hundreds of design opportunities that FileMaker gives us for making the objects on our layouts look great, if you directly apply those to individual layout objects, those formatting attributes must be retrieved from the server, downloaded to the device for every single layout object. That slows down the loading of layouts. The solution is to use styles and themes. We'll be touching a little bit on styles and themes today, but I'm going to devote a whole session to it next time in January when we come back. The theme that you use for a FileMaker design for your layouts is downloaded from the server to the device only once per session, as opposed to having to download all those manual formatting attributes per layout object. So it really speeds up your performance. The second performance killer, tables with many fields or with text-heavy fields. The problem here is that records are moved from FileMaker server to the client's device for viewing and back again to the server after editing in toto. That is, all the fields have to come down for any given record, whether those fields were edited or not, viewed or not. And so if you have a table with, let's say, 5 fields in it, and one of them is a text field that users are accustomed to putting loads of text into, 10,000, 20,000, a million characters into that text field, but they don't change it very often. They change the other 4 fields quite often. You're going to get a performance penalty, a performance hit, because that text field still has to be moved from server to the client when they view that record, and back again if they edit any of the fields in that record, not just the heavy text field. So the solutions here could be, A, consider storing those bulky fields in separate related tables so that the related record is only retrieved if needed, if asked to display, if called upon to display in a layout. Also, do not sort or summarize records unnecessarily, because if you ask a sort to happen, let's say via a triggered script, then all the records in the found set have to be retrieved in order to process that sort. Likewise, if you ask a summary field to calculate a result, it has to fetch all of the records in the found set in order to produce that summarization. And that really costs you a lot performance-wise. The third and last performance killer we're going to talk about here are layouts with many objects. the more objects you put on a layout, the heavier it is, the longer it's going to take to fetch from server, especially if you've applied direct formatting as identified 2 slides ago. Okay. So these include, and not the worst culprits among them, related records, because related records are retrieved from the server when asked to display. Okay. Now, and remember, the record has to bring all of its fields down because a record is downloaded or fetched from server in toto, all the fields together. You might consider keeping the portal that's displaying those related records maybe on a tab of the tab panel and having it not be the default tab, the tab that appears first, or have it not be on the first slide pane that appears. You see, if it's not asked to display because it's hidden on another tab, then it won't have to retrieve those records until the user makes the choice of clicking onto that tab to see the contents of that particular tab or slide pane. Secondly, unstored calculations are a real performance killer. Unstored calculations include any calculation that references a related field or references another field that's unstored or references a global field. Now, these can cause a real performance hit because they may require the retrieval of many records from that related table in order to perform their calculation, their count, their sum, their average, whatever it is that you're calculating. I got these performance killers from a fantastic white paper by Mark Richmond entitled Design Performance. It was published back in October 2014. It's hard to find on the web. If you want a copy of it, let me know and I'll make it available. I'll post it somewhere or just send it to you directly. Very much worth reading. There were a couple of websites that I think still offered the ability to download it. FileMaker.com and Claris.com were not among them. At least I couldn't find it anywhere on those 2 sites. All right, so let's go. Let's go build some mobile-friendly layouts. I'm going to switch into FileMaker, and I've got our beloved animal care file open that we've been building throughout these sessions. This is version number 5, and you all had it available to you. It's up on our website, and you got the link in the email that I sent yesterday. So the first thing we're going to do, now that we're starting to care about different kinds of connection methods, people connecting using FileMaker Pro on their desktop device, or FileMaker Go on their iPhone or iPad, or maybe using a web browser and connecting via FileMaker WebDirect. We need to now start coming up with a clever navigation scheme. And the approach that I use, and that I'm going to be teaching you in later sessions, is I use the names of the layouts to determine, or as an integral part of the navigation scheme. Okay, you can see that I've already taken the time to rename all of these layouts except for the first one, inserting the word form there between the name of the table and the name of the device that that layout is designed for. So we've got all these layouts that are desktop friendly, each one for a different table in our system, and each showing one record at a time. That is showing in form view. As I go to customer form, there's our customer table with one record at a time, and we can flip through, right? Form view only. So I use my layout names as an important part of the navigation scheme. Animal desktop, I haven't renamed because I wanted to draw attention to this. I'll go ahead and do that now. The names of the layouts that I use, the naming scheme that I employ, starts with the name of the table that that layout is based on. That way I know at a glance what records are we going to be looking at through that layout. In the middle comes the viewing style that that layout is designed optimally for. That could be form, it could be list, it could be table. Sometimes I'll put report in there if it's more of a printable report, maybe menu if it's more of a main menu kind of a layout, but mostly it's these 3 guys right here: form view, list view, table view. Okay. And since I know I don't want this layout to be viewable in list view or table view, I'll go ahead and disable those now as well. So name of the table, name of the view that that layout is designed for, and then it ends with, of course, the name of the kind of device that that layout is geared toward or sized appropriately for. So the 3 parts of my layout names are going to come up later on as we start to build our navigation scheme and send users to a layout that's appropriate for their kind of device. I'll say OK, save that layout. And now let's go and build a layout that's going to be friendly for iPad users. I'll make a new layout. I'm not going to duplicate a desktop layout and then just kind of try to mash it into being an iPad friendly layout. On the contrary, I'm going to come in here to New Layout Report and say, I'm designing a layout for iPad. This will size it perfectly for me. I'm designing it for form view, designing it for a portrait oriented iPad. And for the name, I'm going to employ that same naming scheme based on the animal table. It's going to show in form view, and it's going to be designed for our iPad users using underscores as just pretty separator characters. There we go. We get this nice new layout. It's using the default theme, which is the Apex Blue theme, but I'll quickly change the theme and go with the Sophisticated Touch theme. The other layouts in the system are using the Sophisticated theme, a custom version, because earlier in one of the earlier sessions I made some changes to some of the styles in it, and that generates a customized version of the Sophisticated theme. Whenever you're deciding on a theme to use, I would encourage you to always choose a theme that has a touch version already built in, where the font sizes are bigger, there's greater padding in the objects to accommodate our fat fingers that we use to touch iPads, iPhones, other touch devices. All right, so Sophisticated Touch is going to be the theme. And then we'll start building up this layout. I want ID genus, ID household, and name, but I want name first. Here in the field picker, you can actually drag fields up and down to rearrange them like so, so that you can then select and position them where you want them. That looks good. I'll bring the photo field over as well, but with no label. Line it up about there with the top of that name field. Something like that. Shift arrows moves objects around 10 times faster than just the arrow keys by themselves. The shift key together with the arrow keys works wonders. And maybe we'll go like so. These two fields need to be pop-up menus because they're foreign key fields, and we're going to take advantage of the pop-up menus that we had designed earlier, or the value lists, I should say, that we designed earlier, to be able to easily populate those fields. There we go. And then I want a portal. I know I told you not to use portals because they'll fetch related records, but I didn't mean don't use them at all. Just be careful. Don't cause your layouts to fetch a whole large number of related records. Now, the relationship on which this portal is to be based doesn't exist yet, so we'll go and quickly create that relationship. We want to see all of the visits made by any given animal. So here on the relationship graph, I'll make a new table occurrence for the visit table, and we'll string it as a buoy off of the animal table occurrence, naming it animal underscore visit to be anchor buoy compliant. And that's going to be foreign key ID animal matching ID in animal. There we go. Good relationship. The portal takes it. We'll say, yeah, I want to be able to delete visits just in case there's one that needs to go away, and maybe that and that. And we'll say, okay. And then I want the date of the visit and the vet who performed the work or who saw that animal. Okay, it's not quite tall enough, so I'll just double click on the gray part here and say number of rows 4 instead of 3. There we are. Let me see if I have any room. Yeah, I go about right. And I'll add some column headings across the top, holding down the Option key and dragging this text label. Makes it easy to duplicate objects. That's the Control key if you're using a Windows machine. There we go. This should probably be a drop-down calendar. And this also should be a pop-up menu like the other foreign key fields, this one using the value list vet. Now notice what happened as soon as I chose pop-up menu for the control style of this ID vet field. It changed its look. It became white instead of transparent. That's because it took on the default style for that kind of object, pop-up menus. Each control style has a different collection of styles that can be used to govern it, that we can use to govern its formatting. And I'll come over here to the styles pane, and we can see, oh yeah, sure enough, it changed to default, whereas when it was just a normal edit box field, because it was in a portal, FileMaker defaults to applying the minimal style to it, which makes it transparent, makes it look less attractive. Like these over here are using the default styles because they're not in portals, and FileMaker just assumes that we want them to look like fillable fields, whereas portal fields are automatically applied the minimal. You don't have to stay with that. You can say, no, make that one default as well. But I want that one to look minimal, and I want this one to look minimal as well. That makes it transparent and makes a few other design changes to it that's going to make it just sit a little bit nicer visually inside a portal. All right, let me save the changes that I've made so far to this layout. And we'll take a look, exit layout. Okay, now it looks good. It's going to fit on an iPad. But what if the user rotates their iPad to horizontal? We'd want to take advantage of the extra space. Maybe make it so that the household names, which are a little bit longer than can fit here, will stretch out and we can see them. So we'll turn on some auto sizing. First of all, I'm going to shift my portal over a little bit, use some of that space, maybe tighten this up a touch as well, and make the portal wider like so we can stretch this out, get the whole vet name showing. And then we'll make the portal and these labels above it, we'll make them so that they shift to the right. That is, they'll shift right, they'll be tethered or anchored to the right side of the layout if the window gets made wider, but they won't stretch because I've turned off the left. These, on the other hand, these three fields, I want them to be stretchy, so I'm going to tether both their left and rights to the left and right edges of the layout, respectively. I think I got everything there that I needed done. We'll take a look at browse mode now, and we can see that as the window gets narrower, the middle fields shrink back to their designed size. They can never get smaller than they were designed to be, but they can get larger if the user rotates the iPad to horizontal or landscape orientation, and the portal just nicely slides out of the way. Now, I have found that if you design the iPad layouts first, the iPhone layouts come along nicely, almost for free, with very little effort. Okay, so I think I've got everything done there that I want. Again, we'll save the changes that I just made, and then we'll duplicate that layout. And go in and change its name to be iPhone friendly, right? Same structure to the layout name, ending with the device that they're using. Now, again, I know I told you I wasn't going to duplicate one of the desktop layouts because I didn't want to have to maul it into shape for iPad size, and now I've just broken that rule, but it's not all that hard. I was being a little bit dramatic. We can use screen stencils, this menu right here, to find out how wide an iPhone is. It tells us exactly. FileMaker ought to know, being owned by Apple Computer. An iPhone is 320 points wide in portrait orientation, 568 wide in landscape, but we're going to design for the smaller of the two dimensions so that nothing gets crowded and so that users don't have to scroll horizontally to see what's further over there to the right. You noticed that I already had those stencil sizes turned on. They weren't showing until I turned the whole feature on. Clicking the icon here turns on the display of the stencils, orange boxes that show you the iPhone in a landscape orientation here and in a portrait orientation here. You can add other screen stencils as well, like iPad sizes there, and they will appear. You scroll down a little bit, you can see there we're exactly right on at the size of an iPad at this point, and horizontally likewise. Okay, and there, the orange box ends exactly right. An iPad is 768 points wide. An iPhone, though, as we just learned, is 320. So what I'm going to do is come in here, and with nothing selected, I'm going to change the width of this layout to 320 points. There. Now I know exactly how much space I have to work with horizontally. Also, by looking at the stencil, I know how much space I have to work with vertically. But again, not that big a deal to make people scroll vertically to see what's down below. Folks don't mind scrolling vertically to get to the items or the material below, but they do hate scrolling horizontally to read the ends of sentences or the right edges of fields and so forth. So please do not ever make users scroll horizontally on their mobile devices, or they will not like you. I guarantee it. And you can see how easy this is to add in or to design this iPhone layout. Let's move that down a little bit. Because I had used a 3-column layout or a 3-column kind of a display on my iPad, you just take those 3 columns and shift them down to below each other, and it seems to work out really well. Now that I know how much space I'm going to need, I can shorten that body part up. No need to make the layout taller than would be desired. And again, I don't really care that I'm going right through the floor of the iPhone, the maximum height of an iPhone in portrait mode. Folks don't mind scrolling vertically to see what's down below. They're used to it. Okay, let me save the changes that I've made to that layout. And there are some problems yet. Let's go in browse mode, and we can see that the shifting and stretching is a little goofy because that came over when I duplicated the layout, but we'll just fix that up. Say we want the photo to be stretchy horizontally. These fields are already stretchy horizontally. That's good. The portal, somebody's writing on my screen. Hey, Tom, stop writing on my screen. Let's see if I can turn off annotation. All right. And how do we clear those annotations? Annotation, clear.
Sorry about that. I'm on my phone. I didn't mean to do that.
No problem. No problem. And I'm trying to clear it. And there we go. Okay, got it. All right. That's fine. We're all family here. Okay. So then I wanted to take this portal and make it stretchy horizontally. You can make a portal stretchy vertically, which is really magic because it allows the portal to show more rows than the designed 4 rows here that I have built into the portal. But since an iPhone screen size is a fixed size, users can't make the window in which the database is displaying bigger. It's pointless to make a portal taller or stretchy, I should say, vertically on an iPhone layout. Okay, I think maybe I can go a little up here. I'm trying not to be a perfectionist, but it just is almost impossible. And then we'll exit and save. And let's see how that looks. So if the user was on an iPhone screen like so, oh, I forgot to do the column labels. The layout looks pretty good. The column labels here are still shifting over. I'll take care of that next. And if they rotate it to landscape orientation, the fields are going to get wider, including the portal getting wider. This field is not stretching, and we would want it to stretch. So let's make that happen. We'll go there, make it stretchy there, and then, okay, that's good. Oh yes, it was the labels that we wanted to go back to left and not shifting over to the right. That should look much better. Okay, so there it is in kind of a simulated landscape orientation. Here it is more in a simulated portrait, and we can see that these fields do stretch like so, like all the others. Okay, so that's good. Next, I'm going to go back to the iPad layout, use it as, again, the starting point for the WebDirect layout. WebDirect has some quirks about it. It's, not every feature in FileMaker Pro or that's supported by FileMaker Pro is supported in a WebDirect interface. And so it's common to design layouts for your WebDirect users. Those are folks who don't have FileMaker Pro on their desktop computer, on their Mac, their PC, or on their Android tablet, for example, but can access the database via a web browser, which of course exists on all three of those kinds of devices. And I won't need screen stencils anymore. And generally speaking, I design my WebDirect layouts about like an iPad layout, but just without the oversized elements, without the oversized font sizes. So I'm going to go back and apply a theme that's more geared toward a desktop style user, the sophisticated theme. All right, Annie's got a question. Screen sizes are populated. The screen sizes are populated, but phones change consistently. If not all features are set to auto adjust, doesn't this throw off the layouts no matter how slight the change in screen size? I wouldn't say throw it off. If we design our iPhone layouts, let's say, for the smallest iPhone screen that's in mass production, which I think is still the kind of the iPhone 5-ish sized screen. Well, it's not in mass production, but then everything else can just grow to support that. Now, and that's a compelling reason maybe why I might have wanted to make that portal over on the iPhone layout stretchy vertically, because then that would take advantage of the taller iPhone screens. Maybe this would be a good idea. Thank you, Annie, for bringing that up. That way, there won't be a larger gap at the bottom of the layout for any iPhone users, no matter what size iPhone they have. And I'll do that same thing. Actually, no, I'll leave it. Okay, so here we are back on the WebDirect layout, and I've changed the theme to just the sophisticated theme, not the touch version of sophisticated. All the fields are now taller than they need to be, so I'll just shrink up one of them like about so, and then select the other fields that need to be shrunken vertically, and come over here and we'll say, let's resize all those objects to be to match the height of the smallest among them there. And they all go to that smaller size, which is going to let us shrink up the portal like so. It might have gone a little too aggressively there. Good. We can shift these guys up again, shift up arrows, shift up arrow. We can resize this a little bit. And again, I don't want to take your time as I futz around with layouts, but I can maybe add another row to the portal. There we go, and so forth. Obviously, you can spend as much time on this kind of business as you see fit. There. So there's a good looking WebDirect layout that's designed to accommodate or to fit nicely on the average iPad screen, which any desktop or Android device is probably going to fit nicely in that amount of space as well. I'll go ahead and exit and save. We can see how that is going to look. And we do get the stretching of the middle fields and the shifting of the portal that we had applied earlier on. Okay, any questions at this point, now that we've designed some layouts? Okay, wonderful. Let me go back into go into the Manage Layouts command. And now that we've built these three new layouts, I want to move them into the appropriate folders. So let's say Animal Form iPad is going to go into the iPad layout folder, like so. Animal Form iPhone is going to go into the iPhone layout folder, and Animal Form Web into the Web folder. So we've got our desktop layouts, lots of them. As you could probably imagine, this strategy, which is very commonly employed, requires a lot of time on our part to build a layout for all the user-facing tables for all four of these device types. Some people argue against that. I think you want to give your users the best possible experience. So this is kind of the approach that I take. All right, so now we've got those layouts into their nice folders. And at this point, we're going to start to figure out how to send each user to an appropriate layout. Now, the four layouts that I just made for the animal table were for desktop users, WebDirect users or web users, which really could be instant web publishing back in the old days if you're still running an older version of server, or WebDirect in the newer versions of FileMaker Server, iPad users, and iPhone. Those are the 4 classifications that I want people to fit into. All right. So to do this, we're going to write a function. We're going to use some functions to determine the device type. We could use get system platform, which returns the number 1 if they're on a Mac device, a -2 if they're on Windows, a 3 if they're on an iOS device, but it doesn't discriminate between iPhone and iPad. Get system platform returns a 4 if they're connecting via WebDirect, and a 5 if they're on Linux, which is a new feature, support for Linux in FileMaker as of, well, just the last few months. We could also use, or instead, in addition, use get device. Get device returns a 1 if they're on a Mac, a 2 if they're on a Windows. So yes, there is some overlap here. A 3 if they're on an iPad, a 4 if they're on an iPhone, 5 for Android, and a 0 for unknown. Now, these 2 functions alone, each one of them, are ambiguous because a user could be on a Mac or a Windows device, but still be connecting via WebDirect. They may not, they may be using a web browser and not FileMaker Pro client software. So we could use these 2 together and say, well, okay, if the device is 1 and the system platform is 4, then we know they're connecting via a web browser in a Mac or on a Mac, so desktop size screen, but WebDirect functionality. That would be a little complicated because there are several permutations that we'd have to create. Or we could use the get application version function. Get application version returns text strings that include or that look like this, like I've got in quotes, the word pro and then the version number of the FileMaker Pro version that they're using, like 19.1.2, if they are connecting using FileMaker Pro on the desktop. We'll get the phrase web publishing engine for anybody connecting in via any web client, which includes WebDirect, instant web publishing, and custom web publishing. We'll get go_iPad if they're using an iPad and running FileMaker Go on it. And we'll get Go and then the version number of FileMaker Go if they're running on an iPhone using FileMaker Go. So get application version, there are a few other results that it could bring back, but those 4, those give us everything that we want. Remember, we were looking for desktop, web, iPad, and iPhone, and here we've got it. So what we'll do is we'll write a formula that uses the pattern count function to detect the existence of the word pro or the string pro or web or iPad or go. And if pattern count says, oh, I found the word pro within what the get application version function returned, then you know they're using FileMaker Pro and they must be on a desktop device. Likewise for web, iPad, and go. Here's an example. We'll write the formula pattern count, get application version, search for the string pro and tell us if you found it or not. It'll only find it either 0 times or 1 time. So with this formula, we'll only get either a 1 or a 0 in any case for each of these 4 formulas that we're going to write, searching for pro, for web, for iPad, and for go. Keep in mind that the pattern count function is not one of the case sensitive functions. There are only 3, and this is not one of them. All right, so let's go detect our user device. Back into our database, and I'm going to write this formula as a custom function. I could just write it into the script, but I want to use a custom function for 2 reasons. One, because I may find it useful elsewhere in this animal care database to be able to perform the detect device kind of logic that we're going to be employing here, okay? But 2, I also know that this is something that I want to be able to build into almost every other database that I build in the future. And building this logic as a custom function makes it so that you can easily import this function into other databases with the ability to import custom functions between FileMaker files. We're not going to need any parameters here, and we're just going to say let let there exist some variables. I'll clean this up a little bit. There. Let's start with letting there exist a function variable called app for application. And we'll set it to be equal to what we get when we go out and get the application version. Okay? Get application version right here. Boom. That's going to return one of those text strings that I just showed you. Pro and then the version number, web publishing engine, go iPad, or go. Then let's let there exist another variable called pro, let's say, and let's set it equal to what we get when we run the pattern count function on the contents of that app variable when searching for the string pro. Then I'll just copy and paste that line 3 times. And we'll say, instead of looking for pro this time, let's call this, or instead of calling it pro this time, let's call this variable web, and let's search for the string web within the application version. Then iPad, searching for the string iPad. And lastly, iPhone, searching for the string go. Right? And then for our calculation, we'll just use a case function that checks to see which of those cases is true and returns the appropriate device name or application name as a result. So for case, we'll say test 1 is, we're going to just look at the variable called pro that we invented up here. We're going to look at the variable called pro, and we could say, does pro equal 1? And if so, then that means that they're on a desktop device, and we'd want to return the phrase desktop, like so. But honestly, we don't really need the equal 1 part, and here's why. We know that the pattern count formulas that we wrote up here in these 4 lines are going to return either a 0 or a 1 in each case. Either they found the word pro or they found the word go once or twice. Now, you might be wondering, well, wait a minute. iPad is going to return go underscore iPad. That's why we're going to put the check for iPad first. The case function will stop searching when it finds a true case. Okay. Anyway, back to the zeros and ones. It's only going to return a 0 and a 1. And in Boolean logic, 1 means true and 0 means false. So basically we're saying, does 0 equal 1? If not, then skip this. Or does 1 equal 1? If so, then return this result and stop checking. So I love the fact that the famous mathematician, 18th century mathematician George Boole came up with this logic of Boolean logic that we can use in our calculations, giving numeric equivalence to the concepts of true and false. Now let's push that down and continue on. All right, then we'll check the iPad variable and say if it's equal to 1, if it's true, then we want to return the phrase iPad. And lastly, we'll check our iPhone variable, see if it's equal to 1. And if it is, then we want to return the phrase iPhone. There. And as a result, we now know what kind of device or application the user is using to connect to our database. And remember how we named our layouts, they end in web or desktop or iPad or iPhone. So we'll be using the result of this function to determine, to determine the layouts that we send users to. There we go. And we've got our custom function. Now let's write the script that will use that custom function to determine the device. I'm going to call it detect device as well. And we'll set a variable sv space bar. We'll call it $device. The $2 makes it a global variable, which means it's going to live on in memory throughout this whole session. And the calculation is just going to consist of our custom function name, detect device. It doesn't require any arguments, so technically I'm not required to put the parentheses, but good form says let's do that. Every function really ought to have parentheses after it, whether they're filled or empty. There. Now when this detect device script runs, it's going to result in a variable called $device being stored in memory that will contain the word desktop or web or iPad or iPhone. Then let's use that when we send our users to the appropriate layout. So I'm going to make another script called go to layout, and I'm going to name it in such a way that it kind of prompts me to supply some script parameters, some incoming information to it. And this script is going to say, first, create a variable. We'll call it our parameter list, like so. And it's going to be equal to what we get when we go out and get the incoming script parameter that was passed into this script. Then we'll make another variable. We'll call this one table, and we're going to use a wonderful little function called getValue. GetValue can reach into a value list like the param list variable that we just created and grab the value out of one of the slots in that value list. We want it to grab item number 1, the first item in the list. And we'll call that one table. Remember how I named my script? It's expecting to receive incoming script parameters of the table name that the user wants to go to, and then the view that they want to go to. Now I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate that script step, and we'll simply change the variable name to view, and we'll change this 1 to a 2 to grab the second value out of that parameter list. And then lastly, now that we've kind of sliced and diced up the pieces of this parameter list incoming script parameter, now we'll be able to send the user, GTL, go to layout, send the user to a layout. That layout is going to be calculated by name, and it's simply going to concatenate or string together the name of the table that was specified, and then an underscore, and then the name of the view, and then an underscore, and then the name of the device that this user is on, which, remember, we defined that global variable back in our detect device script. So that global variable will still be in memory, and we can call it in this script. All right, I'll save that. And then lastly, I'm going to make a script called onOpen that's going to run both of those other two scripts. So first, we'll do a perform script, and we'll have it perform the detect device script. Then we'll do another perform script, PS, and we'll have it run the go to layout script, but we'll pass in the script parameter of the layout that we want the users taken to initially when they first open the database. And we could do this like this. I want them to go to the animal form layout. So I could go like this, right? And make a concatenated value list all in text, but that looks a little messy. And so instead, let's use the list function. The list function is capable of creating value lists for us, creating a list of items with carriage returns separating them. And then we'll just include the two pieces of text. Sorry. Get my keys, my fingers on the right keys. There we go. That's much nicer to look at and easier to add additional elements to, additional list items to in the future if you want. All right, so now that I've showed you that when calling the go to layout script, I'm going to pass in a list type of form, in a value list, carriage return delimited list, the words animal and then form. Now this script will make a little more sense. We're going to get what was passed in to this script. Then we're going to start parsing it up and grab the first item of the list and store it as a table. Then the second item of the list, second value out of that list, and store it as a variable called view. And then we're going to stitch that all together into a thing something that hopefully represents one of the layout names, animal underscore form underscore, and then whatever device the user is on, desktop, web, iPhone, or iPad. All right, we'll save that script and we can close these guys up. I'll hide the on open script, move it up to the top of the list. Then we simply have to make it so that that on open script runs automatically when the database first opens. And we're going to do that here in the file options command. On first window open, run the on open script. There we go. It's that easy. Let's test it out. I'll move away from the layout. Anyway, actually, I'll just get into some whatever random layout there. And then I'll close this database and reopen it. I think that's the one. Well, just to be safe, let's make sure. I'll open it manually. It's on the desktop. Right there. So this should take us to animal form desktop, and indeed it did. Now if I connect to it from my iPhone, which I can do by turning on peer-to-peer sharing, file, sharing, share with FileMaker clients, we'll turn it on. Oh good, it's already on. And animal care, good, that all users, okay, fantastic. So that's going to let me look at this from my iPhone. Now, let me share my iPhone screen with you all. I will make a new share, iPhone, and screen mirroring. Okay, it's coming up. Okay, and I think you all can see my iPhone screen now. And I'll launch FileMaker Go 19. And we can see right there is the name of this local computer that I'm sitting at. So I'll tap on that, and it'll show us our oh yeah, security warning, because this is not running a secured connection, but that's all right. I'll connect anyway. There's the animal care database, and let's see when I open it if it takes us to the layout that's appropriate for an iPhone. It did. Look at the layout here, and I'll tap layout here, and it'll tell us the name of the layout that we're on. Tapping iPhone there. So that's the active layout. So our script works. We're sending users to the appropriate layout. And of course, if an iPhone user makes changes to any information, it changes in the actual database, and therefore would be reflected in the FileMaker database. In fact, I'll change Hazel's name to her full name, Hazelnut, like that. And immediately over in the FileMaker database, it's changed. And I'll go ahead and share the main window again, and we can see that that change has been made right there. All right, a few minutes over time. I apologize for that, but we got through some good stuff, I think. All right, that is what I wanted to get through with you. So any questions, comments, or your thoughts?